Does age and size really matter in Jiu-Jitsu, or is it all about technique? If you're an older, smaller grappler like me, you probably ask yourself this question more than once. My name is Mike Lord, and I'm a 46-year-old brown belt, and I compete year-round between 135 to 140 pounds. In the training room, I'm almost always the smaller, older guy. So when does size and age actually matter in Jiu-Jitsu, and when do they not? And if you're an older, smaller grappler like me, how do you set your expectations so you don't go home every day feeling like a loser and you suck at Jiu-Jitsu? That's exactly what we're gonna break down in this video today. So let's get into it. It's important we understand the hierarchy between strength, weight, skill, and age, and also what context we're talking about it. So there are two main areas where this makes a difference. And the first one is competition, and the second one is in the training room. So generally in competition, it's just broken down into three different areas. One is your rank, so that's your belt or your skill level. Number two is your weight, and number three is your age. And when you look at the relationship between these three, obviously rank is like one of the first things that we look at, and that's the skill level, right? Because it doesn't make sense if someone's the same age and the same weight, but you have a black belt versus a white belt. So, in competition, rank trumps over weight and age. And then second, you want to have weight. And then third is you're going to have age, right? So, the reason I say age plays the smallest role is because when you have guys like Wagner Rocha or Rafael Lovato Jr. competing today, these guys are much on the older side of competition. And I mean, they could be competing in masters, but they're freaking beasts and they compete in the adult division all the time. And so, they figured out ways on how to maintain their physical abilities and to be able to compete with the younger people. Now, in the training room, day-to-day roles, skill still plays the biggest factor in terms of how your jiu-jitsu is. But, skills does have its limitations, and weight and strength take over at some point. So I don't care. Like, let's just say that you're a 125-pound black belt and you're going against a 250-pound white or blue belt, right? Or let's just say an early blue belt, so he knows something about jiu-jitsu. There's probably very little that this guy who's half the weight, 125 pound, can do to a 250 pound guy that has a very basic knowledge of jiu-jitsu. And you might catch him and think, and you might be able to catch that guy sometimes, but overall, it's going to be a freaking battle for the guy that's half the size. So, I think that you have to be a little bit realistic to yourself in terms of, how much does weight and strength make a difference, right? Because one of the beliefs with jiu-jitsu is that technique matters, size and strength don't matter, okay? Yes, that may matter only against a person who has zero skill, who like literally knows nothing about fighting, right? But if anyone has a basic understanding of jiu-jitsu and you put two people that are totally different in size on there, the weight is going to have such a huge advantage. And most of the time, people who are heavier tend to be a lot stronger, right? So this plays a massive role in the training room, but definitely skill can negate a lot of that, right? And then when you also look at like age in the training room, I think, again, this plays the smallest role, because if you look at age and you look at skill level and you look at the way training rounds happen in the, or how like sparring happens in the training role, like most people, they're not necessarily out there to kill each other, right? So most of the time in my experience, yes, you want to win, you want to get the submission and you want to get the upper hand, but no one's out there to hurt anyone, right? And so, I think that if you take two fit people, one, let's say a 50-year-old and then a 25-year-old, and they're both fit people, they're both equal size, but they even have different skill levels, it's going to play less of a role than skill will play. Now, I took a seminar from Colabate a couple years ago when he came to Florida, and one of the things that he mentioned to me is that he believes that age shouldn't be a factor in terms of whether you can beat someone or not. And so if you fight someone of your same size and skill level, you should be able to beat them. And this kind of like put a bug in my head to make me think about like, okay, as I'm getting older, I probably shouldn't I probably shouldn't continue to keep focusing on my age, and I should just really focus on my skill level and focus on being able to have very competitive matches with people close to my size. So if you've ever competed before, tournaments, and especially the IBJJF is pretty good about this, but the other ones, because they're a little bit smaller, they tend to have less divisions. But the IBJJF breaks everything down into belt level, so that's your rank, and then it's going to go to age division, so that's adult, master 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you get into your weight, right? So, and there's a reason for this, right? Divisions exist for fairness and accurate skill assessments. If you don't compete against someone within your similar rank, you don't really have a good idea of where your jiu-jitsu is at. And so this is a big reason why I compete, is because, you know, in the training room, obviously being a smaller guy, I get dominated on a regular basis pretty much every day. But when I go compete, it gives me a good gauge of where I'm at. You know, when you look at age as a factor in competition, there is a big difference in speed. So, you know, I've competed in the adult division at 45, 46 years old. And that just didn't go well for me at all, right? So these 18-year-old, 20-year-olds just basically mop the floor with me. Like, they're running around me like Speedy Gonzalez, and like I blink and next thing you know, they have my back, right? So there is definitely a big difference in speed and just athleticism overall. Going to the World Masters or the Pans or any of these major IBJJF events, it gives me an opportunity to really see where I'm at within my division, my true natural division. Now, the problem is that, you know, obviously I'm competing in Masters 4, so at my weight division, there's less and less people, so I always have to go down to like Masters 1, 2, or 3. So ideally, like, I'll go to Masters 2 and 3. Masters 1 starts to get a little bit more hairy for me, but you know, overall, the competition experience has allowed me to really give me a good gauge of how my jiu-jitsu is progressing and where I'm at. So the question becomes is, when does size matter and when doesn't it matter? So when you look at size, stronger, heavier opponents can control positions better, apply more pressure, and resist submissions. And as far as weight, you know, that plays a major role in top control, escapes, and takedown exchanges. I mean, just think about it, right? If a guy who's like, has basically no skill and he's twice your weight and he's just squeezing the crap out of you in top control, holding you down, there's probably very little you can do to actually like create movement. When size and strength don't matter as much is when someone has good technique, you know, they have good speed and they have good leverage, because a lot of that can neutralize the bigger opponent. So, you know, again, skill does play an important role in this situation, but skill is not going to trump every situation either. Now, good examples of this David versus Goliath situation is, you know, Mikey Musumeci or Marcelo Garcia. So Mikey has a video out there, and I don't know how much bigger the guy is, but let's just say that he was almost 200 pounds bigger or 150 pounds bigger than him. And it was an absolute at one of the worlds. And, you know, Mikey played a different game. He played on the outside. You know, I believe he strangled him, you know, with a lapel choke. But, you know, even like Marcelo Garcia, when he fights from the outside using a lot of arm drags, using a lot of pinning, you know, where his feet's on the outside. Definitely the smaller guy can have a very specific game to go against bigger people. And so even for me, like, you know, I roll with bigger guys all the time, and thankfully they're nice enough to let me play the top right off the bat. So, you know, I get to work a lot on my passing. And so, because the bigger guy knows if once he's on top, he's just going to smash me. And so my only goal is don't let him on top, stay on the outside, and try to get to his back. And that's kind of been my game, because, you know, I've had to develop this over the years, because, you know, in the training room, there's guys, the average size is probably going to be between 175, 200 pounds or something like that. And so I always just have to have developed a game that allows me to get to someone's back. And that's like being able to get underneath people. And as I learned leg locking, this was another big thing is, you know, how can I use the legs to mitigate the difference in size and strength? Because of this video title, you're probably wondering, when does age actually matter, right? So, you know, age matters, I think, when it comes down to, you know, recovery, endurance, and also just your explosiveness, because as you get older, that explosive, you know, ability that you have tends to decline over time. So, you know, you start recovering a little bit slower and you probably need more recovery time. But as far as like when age doesn't matter, I think that as long as you have some sort of cognitive function, when it comes down to strategy and technique and experience, that can almost outmatch any youth and athleticism to a certain point. So I just want to be clear that that's not going to be the end all be all, but it is going to make a very huge difference. And I find people that as they even get older, their technique gets better and better over time. So I train with a lot of older guys who are well over 50, and their games are so fucking good. Like, when you look at, especially when they started late, let's say at 45, and let's say they're 55 years old right now, their technique is still getting better. So as long as you're on the mat learning and studying and being a student of the game, age doesn't really affect your ability to learn techniques and to be able to have better strategy on the mat. Just because you're older or just because you're smaller doesn't mean you have to be weaker, right? So there's a lot of things that we can do, like strength training is one of probably the biggest things that people neglect because they just want to go train Jiu Jitsu. But a lot of the work to become better at Jiu Jitsu actually takes place off the mat, right? So studying obviously being one of them, but strength training, nutrition and recovery. And if you are older and under medical supervision, there's TRT and there's hormone optimization, right? And so this makes a huge difference in terms of how you can show up to the mat consistently, right? Because if you're constantly wrecked and you're feeling in pain and you haven't really recovered all that much, and then you train 5-6 days a week, you're just going to be broken every single week, and your training is not going to be that good, and your cognitive function is going to be terrible, right? So, if you want to be able to show up a better version of yourself and the best version of yourself each time, you got to look at these areas, right? Strength training, nutrition, recovery, and also, supplementation. And when you start putting in the work and even getting better sleep, you'll notice a big difference in your performance. And this is another thing too that you can do to reduce the gap, the athleticism gap between older and younger people, is that the older guys, we have to be more disciplined and more strategic on how we treat our bodies. If you want to last in the training room without feeling defeated every single day, you're going to have to shift your mindset, right? Because the older and smaller you are, the harder it's going to get, the deeper you get into your jiu-jitsu journey, right? And so if you go into the mindset of the training room that I'm going to win every single time, you're probably just going to go home crying. So you have to think that you're not here to beat younger, stronger opponents every round, and you need to focus on improving technique, getting better at positional escapes, getting better at survival. And the other thing too is that you got to work on your energy efficiency, because if you're doing all these big movements that require a lot of energy and that also increases your chance for injury, chances are you will get injured, and you'll also be dying every time you go on the mat, right? So one of the things I always promote in jiu-jitsu is being efficient with your movement, but that comes with time and experience, right? When you're young, you're the spazzy white belt, but as you get older, you learn to be more efficient, and then as you get more experience, you learn when to use the energy, right? So I'm not saying just sit there and be 100% efficient, but be more conservative with your energy and how you use it, and that's done through skill acquisition. I have to spend a lot of time defending, escaping, preventing, things like that. So, what I've learned over time is how to frustrate my opponents by keeping my elbows tucked in, by keeping frames, by keeping grips, and also a distance management, right? So these are all things that you can do that don't require a great deal of energy, but obviously this requires skill and experience. And, the other big thing too is that you just got to keep your ego in check. I accept that I'm going to get tapped all the time. It's not like I go into a role with someone and think like this person is not going to tap me. Like that's just not even what I think about. And so what I focus on, especially if I know they're a younger athletic or just a more skilled person than me, I just accept the situation as this is an opportunity for me to work on my passing. This is an opportunity for me to work on my defense or how to transition from a defensive to an offensive cycle. So, when you get on the mat, you just have to change the way you think about how you're going to roll and just get out of the whole I'm going to win the open mat idea. If you want to be in jiu-jitsu for the long term, is you got to focus on consistency, right? So you can go intense and you can go high volume, and if you're older, you'll probably reach to a higher burnout. So what I like to do is I kind of like to space out my open mat sessions and my training rounds. And I'm not trying to get in hard rolls every single day. And as I got older, I just realized I don't have to do the live rolls at the end of class every single time. Like you're not forced to, you're paying money for jiu-jitsu for the most part. And if you don't space your training or your intensity out, so if the general rule is this, lower intensity, more consistency equals better jiu-jitsu, right? Because just like anything else, you go hardcore in the paint, you get burnt out. And when you get burnt out, you don't show up. So I'd rather have consistent learning, half the live rounds, and then you can do maybe an open mat once or twice a week, or even once a week if that's enough for you. But definitely focus on consistency and lowering your intensity. And this will help you train every day. So I hope this video has helped you understand the relationship between rank, weight, strength, and age, and when it makes a difference, and how you can offset some of the disadvantages you might have through the size and age difference by training smarter, by being more prepared, and by studying. So your mindset should really be focused on growth, efficiency, and longevity, and not trying to win open mat. Thank you for staying to the end of this video, and if you found this helpful, please like and subscribe to our channel to help us create more content like this for you.